Bem-vindos à Aula Magna da graduação. Nessa edição, teremos novidades. Como sempre acontece no final das palestras do seu período, você deve preencher um formulário que garante sua presença no evento e expressa sua satisfação com os palestrantes, temas de palestras, etc. Dessa vez, além dessas informações, você deverá preencher uma atividade de reflexão sobre o evento que poderá se tornar uma grande ação no futuro. Em 30 dias, você poderá visualizar uma devolutiva dessa atividade lá no seu Moodle em uma nova aba com o nome de Aula Magna da Graduação 2023.
Bom dia, sejam bem-vindos à abertura da Aula Magna da graduação para todos os alunos dos cursos presenciais e EAD da Universidade
Good
Presbiteriana.
morning and welcome to the opening class for all students of on-site and remote courses of Mackenzie Presbyterian University. Throughout the day, we'll have speeches focused on social-emotional competence and purpose of life and career. The questions can be sent via the QR code available on the screen. First, we want to register and thank the presence of the authorities who are with us today. Reverend Dr. Robson Grangeiro Monteiro, Chancellor of Mackenzie, Director President of Mackenzie Presbyterian Institute, Dr. Milton Flávio Moura, Dean of the University of Mackenzie, Professor Marco Túlio de Castro Vasconcelos, Professor Janete Bernstein, Pro-Rector of Undergraduate Studies, the Coordinator of the Faculty Development, Professor Dr. Ivo Romans Pons, Professor Marcos Roberto Morita, Entrepreneurial Education Center Coordinator, and Professor Dr. Michael Lindsay, President of Taylor University. We want to thank all the directors, coordinators, and professors and students with us. At the end of the event, through the QR code, you have the form for to register or attendant and your satisfaction. Mackenzie was founded by Presbyterian missionaries as a confessional institution with a mission of educating and caring for our human beings created at the image of God and as citizens. We'll have then a devotional moment and prayer by Chancellor Reverend Dr. Robson Grangeiro Monteiro. Good morning, everyone who are here with us and those with us remotely. Good morning, dear students, professors, and the entire Mackenzie community. We greet you on behalf of the chancellors and bringing a special greetings to Professor Dr. Marco Túlio de Castro Vasconcelos, Professor Dr. Janete Bernstein, already mentioned, Professor Ivo Eduardo Romans Pons, the Coordinator of Faculty Development, Professor Marcos Roberto Morita, Coordinator of the Entrepreneurial Education Center, and remotely Professor Dr. Michael Lindsay, Professor of Taylor University. Thank you for the invitation to be here to bring you these initial words. Yesterday, I was in one of the moments that have brought me more joy since 2020, which is the moment I have been able to be present in all units of Mackenzie School, hospitals, and universities, and also the remote campus in Tamboré in Campinas. Yesterday, I was visiting the campus in Campinas, and it was a great joy to be able to have contact with the students who are certainly here with us today. And they asked me to talk about what differentials a student in the 21st century should have to be successful. It's not such an easy question to answer, but there is an answer that comes from our ancestors. Qualification positioning, and availability. You need to qualify yourself, take a stand, and be available. Since times immemorial, what guides the path, and those who believe in God believe that God has a purpose for each one of us. The unique contribution you can bring to life existence depends on being qualified, taking a stand, and being available. And that is something you find in history, even from kids in biblical studies. It is in the story of David and Goliath. In this story, the theme is how the small individual conquers the big one. Those who are there and capable of doing what needs to be done are able to overcome any scenarios they are faced with. There is, but there's a meta story there where God chooses a man, an unlikely one, but qualifies him, puts him in the proper positions, and makes him willing to do what needs to be done. The scenario you have is for 40 days, Philistines were surrounded in the vale, trying to go from one hill to another under the threat of invasion. But unlikely other occasions, you don't have two armies fighting, but you had one 2-meter tall giant who faces the army and proposes what we historically call, in great myths of history, for the duel of titans. One giant on one side, another one on the other. They challenge each other, and they might win or lose on behalf of their armies, their cultures, their gods, the way they see their realities. Goliath challenges the Israeli armies, who were then headed by Saul, and they don't see anybody who would be able to face Goliath. But there comes a young boy, the youngest of a very large family, who at that time was sent by his father, Jesse, with a simple task, taking a snack to the soldiers so they could stand and be ready for battle. And in such a simple and meaningless task, David hears the challenge from such a giant who says that there was no man courageous enough to fight him, but also saying that his God was larger and more powerful. And in face of all the man who was already qualified and positioned us, but not willing, he asks, aren't you going to do anything? Don't you feel challenged? Don't you feel that to live or die, you should go into the battlefield? You have the armor, all the shields, you have all you need. And then you have that boy who was not qualified, maybe was not in the best position, but was willing, and that was the most important thing for you, all young people here today, being willing, ready for change, and taking a position that from less you can get more, and to take challenges. David took a position, and unlike going against all odds, he won, and he became the king. That's the story of how an unlikely young man becomes the king. And the path he took, in a unique manner chosen by God, he was unaware of. And that's the secret. You never know what the future holds for you. You don't know what God intends for you, what life has in store for you. You don't know what's your position under God's light and how you can provide your unique contribution to society. I didn't know when I was young. Most of the professors here didn't took the path the way you probably think they did. They didn't start school saying, no, I'm going to take a master's degree, I'm going to get a PhD and have that specific role I have today. I won't be the dean or director. None of us ever foreseen the path we were going to do. Professor Matutino certainly didn't see himself as the dean of a university, and I didn't see myself as the chancellor. We were like David. We had small tasks, and those small tasks seems like big missions at the time. Imagine David. He was the youngest in the family, and his only job was to take the snacks to the soldiers. And then we find sometimes ourselves in the same position, asking ourselves, what's our mission? And what God has in store for you and how big these things are will depend on how you handle this small mission you have. And today, that might be getting your qualification, your education. And your education is not only what you learn in school, but what you learn in your unique own path. What each one of you learns is what is going to prepare you and qualify you for life. Not because you're more intelligent, but because you understand that you can make a difference, regardless of what difference that is. At the right time, it will come to you. When David found himself in that situation, he took the position of what he would or could be. He turned to the soldiers and said, why aren't you doing what I want to do? Taking a stand means to be today what you want to be tomorrow. Showing the attitude today that you expect to show tomorrow. Seeing yourself today as a renowned teacher, as the CEO of a large company, you're anticipating is putting yourself way there. Getting an education is something that everybody do, and many times you might see people who seem to be smarter than you, more prepared than you, and are not in the same position of you. It would be there are a lot of people who are more qualified. Many of my previous colleagues were better than me, but I'm the one here today. So anticipating that means taking the position you see yourself in the future. Behaving and acting as the person you want or the position you want to take tomorrow. Continuous learning is what's going to take you there. But if you don't see yourself there, you won't act today in the way you should be acting. And let me tell you a secret. We as teachers can see that. 1 week of classes is enough for any experienced teacher to see and understand those who maybe are not the smartest, but are the ones who have better attitudes, who take stands in class. And these are the students we love best. We love to bring into our projects, people who don't think they know everything, but are willing to do what it takes. And that's what David did. What they told him to do was not what he was supposed to. He was still a young boy, and they gave him the shield of a mature soldier, and that was a heavy thing to carry. And sometimes the position they give you is heavy, and taking those challenges is innovation, is challenging the status quo and thinking, why not? Why can't I fight with 5 little stones? And all he needed was one, by the way. Some people said, maybe one of their friends said, well, that guy is too big. And he said, well, his forehead is also big, and I can certainly hit it. And all it took was 1 stone. But he finished. The moment the giant fell, he didn't think he had won the battle. He took his sword and cut the giant's head out. And he said, he is over and done. Like the same thing you do when you hit a nail till the end. And for that, you need to take a stand. You need to be willing. If you're not willing to do what it has to be done, the place that is reserved for you is going to be occupied by somebody else. And I want to close my brief, but now seems long words. I was a young theology student. I had just finished my psychology schools, and a scholarship came out for me to go to London to work with John Scott. For those of you who are Christians know who I'm talking about. He was a phenomenal human being. And my parents had given me the possibility to study English. I didn't go there to study. I went there to flirt with girls. My English was not good at all. So I asked a friend to write a letter explaining why I was deserving of that scholarship, which is something common and sometimes is done through interviews. Thank God at that time, a telephone call was very expensive, because if they need to talk to me in English, it would be a tragedy. So I asked this friend to say, look at this letter. And he read and said, what did you want to say? Really? What did you mean? So bad was the English. So I said, what I wanted to say is this and that. And he said, okay, tell me what you want to say and I'll write it down for you. And that's what he did. And the letter was sent and I was approved. So I got there incapable of keeping up with a single morning of classes. At the end of the week, I had headaches because I was not ready for that challenge. But I took a stand. And more than that, I was willing to do what it took. From that hard start, many doors opened in my life because I learned from David that maybe you're not the most capable, but if you are the best the one willing to take the stand, life will choose you and give you a phenomenal role to bring the contribution to humankind. These are lessons from the scriptures, but just listen to them, try to understand, and it's going to become a lesson to your life. I hope this event will bring you great lessons, and you can see this moment as a single moment in your life. Giants are out there challenging you, challenging your capacity to say, I can, I will, and I'll do. God will listen. He is available to follow along with you. He was with me, he was with David, and he's always with those willing and well positioned. Qualification, he'll give you along the way. May God give you your path and inspire you to hope and wish to be qualified, well positioned, and willing. What all speakers are going to say is very important, but I know how important the first word you listen to is, in your life: qualification, positioning, and willingness. So I want to pray, God, that watches over you, all who are here with us in person and remotely. Dear God, dear Father, on the name of your Son, Jesus, we thank you for this opportunity. It is an opportunity to transmitting words and wisdom that those who are older and more experienced have learned. Thank you for the capacity to make connections between the words and wisdoms of your words when the events of our life. Help these young people having this perspective, seeing things. Help everyone who's with us celebrate the capacity, the willingness, and the positioning we offer you. Bless us, God, in the glory of Jesus. Amen. We invite for her greetings, Prorector of Undergraduate Studies, Professor Dr. Janet Bernstein.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome, all of our students. This is our master class. This is an event in which the university is going to stop and listen and learn together. I would like to greet our Reverend Robson Grangeiro and to Professor Marco Tulio de Castro Vasconcelos. I thank you for all of your support during the carrying out of our work with this master class, and Professor Dr. Ivo Eduardo Romans Pons, our Faculty and Career Development Coordinator, working very hard for this event today, a lot of hours without sleep. Professor Marcos Roberto Morita, he's the coordinator of the Entrepreneurial Educational Center. He carries out a very significant work towards the development of our students. Professor Dr. Marco Lindsay, the president of Taylor University, who is going to be here with us virtually and who will soon present his lecture, and Professor, her chancellor, who has started with us today. Thank you very much, all of our students who are here now and those who are with us virtually. Piggybacking on what was said by our chancellor, we have to understand that this is how the university can really encourage all of our students to create a positive impact in society from their own careers. One of the ways is the way the chancellor has mentioned, investing in our own education, being a critical thinker, and considering topics and dilemmas that will impact society and impact the common good. Some of the lectures that are going to be presented today, they have been conceived because of that. We want you to answer questions with compassion and with purpose. Although you are still students, you have the ability to impact and positively influence society. You don't have to be done with your graduation. You don't have to be in prestigious positions. Many of the times, people who are in important positions in companies, they are not the ones who mostly impact society. Of course, that may happen, but that's not the rule. It is very important for you to understand the potential that you have. And what is thinking of the common good? It means that you are going to take actions that are going to affect people other than yourselves. And this reaches other dimensions. When I make my decisions, it's going to impact myself, the group, the organization, my friends, my colleagues, our surroundings, the community, society as a whole, and the planet. Why not? someone other than myself has to benefit from my own actions. This is a motto for your life. And today's lectures with Professor Lindsay, that is going to happen after the award ceremony we are going to have soon, is very much concerning the preparation of people for the world. I hope that this triggers positive things in you so that you can make a difference. During the day, you are going to listen to Mackenzie students and alumni who walked this path and they made a difference, impacting people positively during their career. This is our message to you. Educate yourself and you will be able to achieve a lot. We look into developing 6 competencies within our students: the technical, professional, entrepreneurial competences, ethical competences, communication and critical thinking, global and cultural competences, sustainable development, and common good. And we are going to talk about the Max Teller program, and because this is a program that helps you out in the development of this personal portfolio, and in which all of these competences are going to be fully registered. Everything that you do during your university period, you will be able to replicate in your family and in your work life. But why do I have to do this, you may ask? Why do I have to impact the common good? The question is not why, or why my career has to work towards common good. The idea is you can. And if we can do it, we should do it. Believe in yourselves. We believe in you, and I rest assured you are going to go way beyond the expected. So I thank you very much for attending this masterclass, and I wish you are inspired by everything that happens today. Thank you. We now invite the Dean of our institution, Dr. Marco Tulio Vasconcelos. Good morning, everyone. It is a privilege to be here with you today. It's great to be here for this masterclass, and we already advanced 6 weeks of classes, but I now formally welcome you, and I welcome especially our new students during this first semester. I hope this is an important pathway in your life. Our Reverend has gone back in time, and it was really great. And thank you, Professor Dr. Giannetti, and all of the technicians helping out with this broadcasting, all of our directors, Professor Daniela, Marcy, I see so many of you here, Professor Hermanio, and all of the directors who are virtually with us, coordinators. We wouldn't be able to host everyone in this auditorium, but thank you very much for all of the hard work that you are delivering and have been delivering for our university. So I greet all of you today, and especially I would like to thank Professor Dr. Michael Lindsay for being here with us and for your lecture that is going to happen soon today. It's going to be very good for our development, and we are definitely going to enjoy it. And please receive my greetings. And of course, I also would like to greet all of the students at Taylor University. Thank you for being here with us and attending this event virtually. It is an international event. And I remember my first day of class. I was studying economical sciences last centuries. I'm not even going to mention the year. And one of my professors said, "Dear students, live the university years intensely. Enjoy every moment. enjoy every event, cultural events, lectures, conferences, not only from your areas, from other areas as well. I don't remember my professor. I don't remember who said that, but I don't forget this insight and this piece of advice. Live that intensely. In this university, we have approximately 500 events a year, international events, local events, short-term courses, and I know that you must be busy with your first semester or the work that the university years demand, but please try to attend additional events, improve your network. I would like to also greet Professor Rafael Fonseca, the Communication and Language Center Director. Professor Janetti has already mentioned everything about the human and professional development, mentioning soft skills, and I really think you have to embrace this. We have a lot of the transformative learning experience here so that you can develop at least 5 key competences for you to develop. There are other, of course, but we have elected 5 to work directly with. It is important that you take part and get involved with colleagues from other courses, other schools, and I am sure you are going to have an endorsement on your competence. It's going to really strengthen your resume. But not only that, it's going to make you ready to act. We have a difficult country. We have different challenges. There are beauties in our country, in other countries. We all have challenges. We have a great country, very rich, with plenty of natural resources and plenty of really good people, a lot of water, plenty of resources. We have great conditions of developing ourselves as a country. But we also are here in a role of learning with other institutions and countries. We do have the violence that we have to learn how to deal with. And the challenges are out there, and if we do not face the challenge, we cannot mitigate them or solve any problems. We can learn together. Maybe it's a situation for you to really consider what and where to learn from. What has my university to do with it? What has the place where I work to do with it? Our Brazilian brothers and sisters will need a way of improving or get their lives improved, and we can help with this. When we have the ability of leading projects, it doesn't solve the problem, it helps mitigate the problem. I think that Professor Janetti remembers that when we have an opportunity to do good to people and we don't, we are losing. This is a challenge for a Mackenzie student. We want them to be an important agent of action in their community, in their city, in the world, because challenges are out there. We are surrounded by difficulties. The idea is we have to develop, and it's applicable not only within Brazil, but it can be applied everywhere in the world. I wish you get involved. I want you to be attentive to the opportunities. I know that many of the initiatives are known to you. Sometimes you cannot really communicate everything that is happening, but everything is on the website. You can talk to your professors. You never know when a professor can really change your career. I never thought of being a dean or a university professor. I used to work at Ford Company, but a professor made a change in my life. And I was in Pernambuco working for Ford, and I was really enchanted And I wanted to be an executive and pursue that executive career and be someone important at Ford headquarters. And I was preparing myself for that. But then a professor came and said, would you like to become a university lecturer or teacher? And I was invited by him, and I considered that. And I never thought that would be possible. And all of a sudden, I was approved, and I had to make that important decision in my life. And I chose the academic life. Maybe this is going to be something that's going to happen to you in your life. Now, I wish that you embrace the opportunities. We are going to have an award ceremony soon. And the awarded people are going to be the ones who have accepted challenges. Please take part and don't just be concerned that you are going to lose or win. If you make a mistake the first time, it's okay. You're going to have another opportunity. Mistakes are out there. They have to happen so that you learn. We are going to learn with mistakes, and we will soon succeed. So I wish you a great event, and again, all the best. Okay, now that we are done with the institutional part, we would like to thank you very much. In case you need to leave, this is for the authorities. We understand. Now we are going to start with the entrepreneurial awards. We are now inviting Professor Morita to start with the award ceremony. Good morning, everyone. Okay, I believe that the Chancellor is gone, but I would like to talk to you about a story. But anyway, he told a story that I knew before. We've known the David and Goliath story, but the idea of working skills, being willing, is important. Students who are here because of these willingness, positioning. So congratulations. Let me start with a small provocation. Do you know what this award is all about? Maybe you can understand this because they are going to receive an award because they have probably started a startup, or maybe they've opened a company, but maybe their aspiration is to be a professor or being a judge, a researcher. We never know. This event is for you. It's not about starting up companies, right? The entrepreneurial education is much more than just opening a small business. It's about developing the skills and abilities of a future professional. And what is a future professional anyway? I think that 5 years ago, we could say that that could be a YouTuber, a TikToker, or an app driver. But what is this professional going to be within 10 years? Are they going to be the geneticists? Maybe a chat GPT and analysis person, or a robot. We are going to have several professions during our lives, and maybe the profession that you're going to have doesn't even exist today. This is my third profession. I am a lecturer and professor. But do you work or you only teach? That's the question people ask me. Well, I've done so many things in life. But what are the competences of a future professional that are? The competences are the same as that are required today. Professor Janete and the rector said that we have to know how to lead, be resilient, work in teams, solve complex problems, and
São fáceis?
Work our soft skills. Are they easy? They are not. If you haven't, please take a look at announcements like this. They say, we are looking for youngsters who have an entrepreneurial profile and work as if they own the business. More and more and earlier, you are going to lead teams. Agile methodologies have to be learned, and we have to be able to solve complex problems. These are behavioral competencies, and they are not going to be needed only when you are in a managing level. During your apprenticeship, you're probably going to need something like this, because you're going to lead a group. As Professor Janete said, you're going to listen to successful stories today, and many of them are going to mention the competences that I'm mentioning now. So I believe that you are now convinced of the entrepreneurial education, and these are the themes that we approach during the NEE. It's the Entrepreneurial Educational Center. We teach entrepreneurship, and we also work with entrepreneur projects. Well, maybe you are considering that you have never seen anything that says NEE on campus, but we don't have a physical unit, okay? We are a cloud center, and we support other units. For example, we work with the engineering groups with Professor Massi, we work with Professor Rafael. Okay. Another one, okay. Another one. Okay, this slide.
Uma da Ambev, né, o trio ali. E eles falam no livro que pensar
like Ambev, they say in their book that thinking big is as work-consuming as thinking small. Our big dream is to transform entrepreneurial education in Mackenzie. I've been a teacher in the center since the beginning. I've been coordinator since last June. And the first thing I did was, let's hear what our students have to say. Let's hear them. We conducted a couple of surveys with about 2,500 answers, and two themes came out: the need for greater alignment with our courses, with professors sometimes didn't focus on the psychology, law, and things like that, and the components were very theoretical. For the first one, there is a reason. When we started in one center, moved to another, and ended one at a third one. So we walked 8 steps in a day, easy. But we could hardly customize this journey. We couldn't give different courses in different units. So we are working closely on these 2 issues you raised last semester. So the first thing we did is hire a top-notch team, 6 new teachers that you see. Philippe, the one with the tie in the beginning. Then we have Lara, who is not able to be here with us. Fernando, I don't know if he's here. Vitor, Julia, and Mariana. All young people. They teach at FCI, CCBS, and law school. I can't talk much about them, but among these ones, we have specialists in AI, in legal operation, just talking about 3. We have writers of startup books, directors of technology, students and specialists in health, all top-notch professionals. So the professors in the center know we had a very quick selection process. In just 10 days, we went through 150 different resumes. Some of you may have already had classes with these teachers and with these professors. I've heard some feedback and I like what I've heard so far. Another thing we're doing is customizing. We are getting close to the courses, speaking their language. We had a speech in law school talking about how does law relate to entrepreneurship and stuff like that. We brought many speakers, and I think this was a mind-opening experience for students. There are many options in law, including entrepreneurship. So even 2 of our students work with startups and have companies related to technology. Same thing happened with the other units. We had one at the CCBS, one at the CCS, one in communication. So we are getting closer to the units. And we want the units to have in their agenda for the weeks talking about entrepreneurship, calling this professor so they can talk about entrepreneurship in health techs, for example. So this is a two-way street. And for the classes to be more exciting, not to be boring classes, what about learning through games? We have bought many board games. You may be familiar with some of them. Most of them from Galapagos. We bought 3 of them, Sintonia, mental games, and another one with a ludification of the teaching. We brought the professors who are here can tell you more about that, but the students seem to be enjoying the experience. And we have a game focused on communication, and the students are killing it at it. They really do well, the students from psychology. Just focusing on the game side of things. And let's talk a little bit about the Max Teller program. As Professor Giannetti mentioned, our competence are focused on leadership and entrepreneurial competences. We have all the other ones. For the students coming into the school this year, you have done a lot of activities during your freshman reception sessions focused on these competences, and many of the professors are certainly going to be implementing activities related to Max Teller. And we are the pioneers. Professor Giannetti challenged us 2 years ago. We took on the challenge. We had over 3,000 students participating. This semester, Professor Ricardo is conducting a very interesting activity that he and Professor Raquel did a pilot on that last semester. And that is very it's the same kind of social entrepreneur that Mateus is going to talk about in the afternoon. So we are evaluating social entrepreneurship in action with activities related to that kind of startup. So look forward, because we'll probably have this new option in this semester. And as Professor Giannetti mentioned, we have our e-portfolio. This is what it looks like. Have many of the images, and you have the opportunity of putting together your portfolio. Those of you from the Architecture and Urban Planning School are probably familiar with that. Your portfolio is what you have done. So you will have your own portfolio focusing on everything you do in school, in your academic activities. those who receive an award today can include that right there. I have gotten an award on entrepreneurial education. And just a spoiler for you, there is a group where the girl said, how is the work coming out? It's not moving on so fast, but it's worked for me. I had never gotten an internship. I had an interview. They asked, do you have experience? And I said, no, I don't, but I had an insight, and I said, I had an incubator project that I started developing last semester in school, and with taking that conversation on, she was hired. So that was certainly a sign to the interviewer that that candidate, of course, if you're coming from Mackenzie, you have the education, but she showed a differential knowledge that make the difference for them. So start working on your portfolio. And just to close, we'd like to reinforce that we think big. What are we doing now? With our small little arms, we're working hard, opening a research group, focusing on studying other universities that work on the same theme. We are working on scientific extension projects. A student is going to develop entrepreneurial games. Again, we are talking to our coordinators. If you want to have entrepreneurial themes in your students' course papers, please feel free to do that. Our students have, many of our professors have had conversations with students asking them to work on their final course papers. And we are putting together a team of professors that are going to help you, guide you, and evaluate you on that area. We have just recorded a video last week, and you're going to watch it now.
Olá, eu sou Marcos Morita.
Hello, I'm Marcos Morita. I'm entrepreneuring professor, and I'm here to invite you, entrepreneurship or specialist or anyone in the ecosystem. Did you know that we have Entrepreneurial Education Center here in Mackenzie with several professors who are passionate about the topic, and our students learn from the beginning what's entrepreneurship and what skills you need. They learn in classes that have been specially designed with that in mind. And how can you help? You can first with a course in entrepreneurial principles where we talk about the skills, creativity, negotiation, leadership, and topics that are very dear to companies these days. And now here we need entrepreneurs who can talk about their journey and or professionals who can talk about a company or how to open a company and run your business. In the discipline of entrepreneurial projects, we have fintechs, health techs, and all these companies, and we need mentors for the projects and evaluators who can look at the work and see how they do. Here we have the awards that are going to be given and the next ceremony. If you're passionate about the topic and think that an entrepreneur can change the world, come participate. Just use this QR code and help us. So here is an invitation. Take a picture of this QR code. Think of anyone you can who could help us in the center. It can be your father, an executive you know, a psychologist, a lawyer, anyone you think might be able to help coming to talk in classes about entrepreneurship, helping you in your projects, guiding you as mentors. If each one of us calls one person alone will have a lot of people. We have 3,000 students per semester, so we need as many hands as we can to help us in this project. And here we have our 4 nucleus. We couldn't do anything without them. Lopes, Raquel, Ricardo, Venelli, and Renata, they are our professors. I love them. As the dean and the chancellor had mentioned, they were the one willing to come with us in this journey. And I want to talk about the professors who were with us in the past semesters, sharing their knowledge. These professors have gone back to their units, but they were very helpful in developing our center. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for being part of our history. So without further ado, let's move on with our awards. What are the goals? Quickly, motivating an entrepreneurial culture in Mackenzie, generating new projects. What are the criteria for evaluation? First, what was the problem the students have solved? How big was that pain? Because without a pain, there's no opportunity. The biggest the pain, the biggest the opportunity. What was the opportunity we're able to validate? And that's not in class. We're talking about entrepreneurship out there in the world, listening to what your clients are saying and seeing, checking if those pains are real ones. So students are guided to go out there and check that. The other issue, and how is my solution different from the others? Innovation, what's the technology, product, or business model, new business model that I'm bringing? And the feasibility, to see if your idea really makes it. If you get a solution with that. And each of these items compose 20% of the total score. Professors evaluated 108 pitches in the first phase. We selected 18, and in the third phase, we had 5 final finalists. We start with the 5th one. Who was he? The first place was the project Totem SP Plus. In 5th place, we'll see a little bit of what the idea was about. We had people from production engineering. I want to invite Professor Ricardo, Márcio, and André to hand out the award and certificates. So if you can come this way, please. And now the participants, Gabriel, Mirelle, Thiago, Amanda, Letícia, and Jamile.
Por favor, por favor. Por favor, vamos lá.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Foto do grupo.
Let's take a picture from the group.
E agora, depois das fotos, acho que o professor...
And now, after the pictures, Professor Ricardo has a few questions for the group. There's a microphone there. There are a couple, as a matter of fact.
Obrigado. Bom, parabéns.
Congratulations.
Bom, eu quero parabenizá-los mais uma
I
vez.
want to congratulate you all again. I want to mention that this group studies in the last class of Friday, but they are very motivated. It was a great experience to work with them. And I want to ask you, what led you to choose this topic?
Ricardo, uma pergunta só, tá? Pelo tempo.
One question only, right?
Levou a escolha do tema, né? Vocês trabalharam.
What motivated you to choose this topic? You chose a topic related to health. What was your motivation to choose that topic? Thank you, Professor.
Você disse, é muito desafiador.
First, I want to thank you. It's very challenging to take a class, the last class on Friday night, but it all started with a brainstorming. And during this brainstorming, one of our team mentioned that one of his relatives had gone to a public hospital and the person was there for ages just to go to the first screening. So we had this insight to create something that could solve this long time waiting for screening at a hospital.
Então veio de uma dor, né?
So it came from a specific pain you notice. Great, fantastic. Congratulations once again. Now let's move on to the fourth place. The fourth place
Publicidade e propaganda, professor
comes from the publicity course, Professor Rafael and Rodrigo. Professor Rafael, did you bring anybody else?
E aí já vou chamar a Ana e a Isadora.
And I'm want to call Ana and Isadora.
Especialmente para receber.
One of them was in Disney World and she came back just for this award ceremony. So I want to call them up.
Legal, o projeto delas foi uma consultoria.
All right, so their project concerns consultancy on the topics related to the ESG goals. Now you can pose them one question only, okay, Ricardo?
A pergunta é o que vocês aprenderam com o projeto?
Okay, what have you learned with the project?
A gente nem estava esperando a premiação, mas eu acho
We weren't even expecting the award, but the main thing was to plan this financially because we didn't really know how to have that structured. And with the entrepreneurial learning, we understood how important it is to have everything on a spreadsheet and to really have it visually and understand how much we can invest in a project, how much a project demands so that we can make this happen. And as for life learning, it showed we are able to develop such a thing. We chose to do this as a couple. We were the smallest team, and having this acknowledged with an award has come as a surprise. We are very happy with this award, and this work has really motivated us. We are on a 7th semester of our course, and this has motivated us to follow up on a startup project to finish the course. Having concluded this with an entrepreneurial focus has helped us a lot.
Pode encontrar o professor Rodrigo ou o professor Lopes.
Right, Professor Rodrigo?
Bom, vamos agora para o terceiro lugar.
Let's award the third place. They have created an app called Find a Sitter.
Eduardo Nardelli, então, professor.
Now let's receive Professor Eduardo Sampaio Nardelli and Professor Renata, please.
E os participantes, Amanda, Carol, Fernanda, Isadora.
And the participants, Amanda, Carolina, Fernanda, Isadora, Laura, and Marina.
Eduardo.
Entregar os troféus.
Okay, and to hand the award.
Professor Nardelli, uma pergunta.
One question, Professor Nardelli.
Vou fazer aquela pergunta que interessa assim muito para os
Okay,
professores.
let's just pose the question that is important for the professors. With this experience you've lived, what was the transformation that you have really faced? Well, I think I never thought entrepreneurship was relevant, but with these classes, we see that, for example, a small project like ours could be receiving a prize like this today. It's nice. I think it was really nice to put theory and practice together. Seeing this at practice was the best part of our project. As Laura said, we never thought we'd be awarded at all, especially from the entrepreneurial side. Being a law school student, we never thought that would happen. It's good to see that all of our efforts and all of the moments with our professors made this possible. And being here, receiving this award is great. And it shows that the entrepreneurship can affect and help other areas. We can create projects and be entrepreneurs in any area. Very good.
Bom, parabéns.
Congratulations.
Vamos agora para o segundo lugar.
Now,
O projeto é a Dona.
second place. Project is called Donna.
O Marcelo Lopes. Do curso de
Professor Marcelo Lopes from the Administration School.
E aqui eles querem vender acessórios, brincos,
They want to sell
segurança embutido. Então, se você for
rings and specific jewelry with a safety device embedded in it. Unfortunately, we live in a violent place like São Paulo, so it's useful.
Inclusive, temos a mãe de uma participante aqui, né? É isso
The
aí.
mother of a participant is here, so nice.
Professor Marcelo, uma pergunta, por favor.
Professor Marcelo, you can pose them a question. That question, the question, okay?
Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much.
Enfim, parabéns à equipe.
Congratulations to all of you.
Me interessa, assim,
And
saber o que vocês
I would like to know from you,
tiveram assim, como principal aprendizado, né, da nossa jornada.
what was the main learning during this journey?
A última aula do dia.
We didn't have classes on Friday, but it was the last period of the day anyway. It was such a journey. And I would like to know what is the life lesson. First of all, I would like to thank you when harassment, kidnapping, or
Isso assim, qual uma opção viável de
any
poder ajudar?
type of violence is a concern. So we wanted to help people with creativity and this entrepreneurial perception. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Professor, and all of you. With this project, I think that the lesson that I am taking for life is that it's not easy. It's not easy to create a company. It's not easy to understand what the main pain points from our population are. And it's not easy to have that all structured, considering costs and everything else that a project like this involves. I guess this is it.
As meninas que motivaram, né? Motivaram, super poderosas.
Okay, you're the powerful girls. Well, good morning. We are flattered. Just the way the previous group said, we never dreamed of achieving such result. I think it's a great surprise to make it all the way here. And it was this is a moment of great motivation, especially now that we are starting our careers. It's not easy. And as of learning, we had several learning moments that were important. We started before the pandemics at Mackenzie, and during the whole process, up until the 5th semester, we went through a lot. We had losses of people, and we had ideas that were conflicting. We live this type of conflict everywhere, at home, at university. And we believe that during this semester, it was very hard for us. We were all starting our apprenticeships. We started with marketing, and we started learning inside companies. And she started with Bradesco. She was dreamed about starting there. Victor started at a company of his own, and Gabi's also started with JP Morgan with client relationship, and I started with Itaú working with cards. We took this important step. We were so concerned because we had started our apprenticeship, and working with our schedule was hard. This learning of our self-administration was important. And the project just came to mind on a day when we were very tired. And Giovanna, during that day, she was just admitted at hospital and she couldn't come to class. I was with the boys and we were just so concerned. After we were explained what we were to do, we looked at ourselves and said, well, what are we going to do? And talking about my own story, of course, I was going to say that I come from a very distant city called Catanduva in the state of São Paulo, a 6-hour drive. And when I came to São Paulo, I didn't know anyone. I didn't have a specific thought in my mind. I just knew what I had as my purpose. So I packed my bags. I arrived at Barra Funda bus station, and then I came all the way here by myself as a woman in public transportation. And when you are on a subway or on a bus or a coach, it doesn't matter. I knew it was a risk for me. I knew I had to be concerned about myself, but also about all the other women who were there with me. They had that idea of creating an app. Well, an app? Well, what would this app be about? There are so many. And then the idea just came to mind. Well, I've just arrived. I came on a subway and I take public transportation at 11:30 in the evening. It's improbable. It's difficult. There are so many things that we consider about safety. And ourselves as women, we have this internal conflict. What am I going to wear for uni? Because I'm going to leave later. I cannot, put myself in danger. I cannot be so worried about what I am going to do, where I am going to walk. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. I'm going to start wrapping up. So within all of these details, we understood that this was a pain. And then Gabi had this idea of turning this into a wearable device. And this could be semi-jewelry. So this is how it all happened. So thank you very much. Yes. One last consideration. No, let's just take the pictures. Okay. I think that you know who won, guys. Guys who won, I think you know you're number one, don't you? Congratulations. Okay. On a side note, we would like to thank Mac Empreende. You were very important during the project. So for first place, I'm going to call Professor Ismael and Professor Renata. Law and entrepreneurship is now a reality. They've created a legal tag. Vitor, Luan, Karen, Vinicius, Renata, Felipe, and Samar, you have 6 minutes.
O Renato e o Sr. Ismael já são craques.
Professor Renata and Mani, you are here, right? Okay. Professor Barbosa? Okay.
Bom, e o professor Ricardo, ele é
Well, Professor Ricardo,
nosso representante lá na Faculdade de Direito.
he is from our law school.
Muito bom, então, parabéns a todos.
All right, so congratulations, everyone.
Ricardo, acho que não vai dar para fazer a pergunta.
Professor Ricardo, do we have time for the question? Just one, okay? One question for the group. We only have 1 minute. 30-second answer. Okay. We had a very rewarding experience because we didn't really believe much about the idea, but in the end it worked. What is your vision of what entrepreneurial skills are, and how do you think this is going to impact your career? Good morning, everyone. I'm not going to elaborate much because of the time that we have, but one thing is for sure. We now are aware that we don't need to be managers. We don't need to wait to put a company together to have that entrepreneurial attitude. We understand that entrepreneurship is a way of acting towards a goal. We don't have to have a company. We can do that anywhere. Thank you.
Foto. Tem que juntar pouquinho mais.
Photo time. Photo time. Everybody in the center, please.
O Ricardo fica.
Congratulations.
E para terminar, o Ivo já está
And
rematando.
in conclusion, we don't have a lot of time, guys. I'm going to make their pitch available so that you can see. Let's just now hand in the awards to all the supervisors and professors.
Para entregar.
I'll have Professor Janete to give the awards to the winners.
O teu grupo vencedor está aí ainda?
And is the winning group still here?
Vocês ganharam? Mostrem aí.
Show everyone what you got as gift, please. No, the blue box. The blue box. Yes. Yes. What is the prize, guys? Oh, you got an Alexa as present. Okay, nice gift.
E além dos troféus,
And apart from your trophies, you are going to also receive some books, and you are going to be part of the reading club.
vamos fazer a foto.
Okay, picture time.
Bom, obrigado, pessoal.
Thank you very much, and congratulations. Okay, we still have 30 seconds to go, but let's get back to our program.
Convidamos a parte da
We invite you, our pro-rector, Professor Janete, to lead the works. It's very exciting to see the work of our students and professors. We're very proud of you, and maybe this be encouragement for everyone. There's a lot we can do. So we'll move on to our speech with Professor Michael Lindsay. He is with us virtually, and I'm going to give you a brief introduction of a special speaker. Michael Lindsay is an American sociologist, and he's the president of Taylor University. He was also the president of Gordon College, a private liberal arts Christian evangelical school in the North Coast of Boston from 2011 to 2021. He graduated from Baylor University. In the year 2000, he graduated from Princeton Theological Seminary. He got his postgrad degree in Oxford in 2001. He got his PhD from Princeton in 2006. So here I'm going to move. I'm sure your speech is going to be very inspiring for us. I'd like to remind all of us watching that you can send your questions through the QR code that is on the screen, and they will go straight to our speaker. And now I pass the floor and the broadcast to you over at Taylor.
Good morning. My name is Laura Edwards. I am from São Paulo, capital, and it is my privilege to teach psychology here at Taylor University. Dr. Lindsay serves as the president of Taylor University, and in addition to being an accomplished author and having impressive credentials as a sociologist, he is also husband to Rebecca for more than 25 years and a devoted father to Elizabeth, Caroline, and Emily. Dr. Lindsay holds a special place in his heart for Mackenzie and the Mackenzistas, and it is a privilege for us to have him share with us this morning. Would you help me in welcoming Dr. Michael Lindsay?
Good morning and welcome. We are so excited to greet our friends in Brazil. I just wanted to have an opportunity for you to see these amazing Taylor students who are here. We got up early this morning to be able to greet you. Taylor folks, let's say hello to folks in Brazil. We are blessed with a wonderful relationship with Mackenzie and excited about this history-making day for us to do a broadcast here in the U.S. and in Brazil. I spent 10 years of my life interviewing some of the most prominent leaders in different walks of life and wrote a book about the way in which they navigate change and transition. It's called Hinge Moments. The particular project was a wonderful study in looking at leadership, entrepreneurial leadership that serves the common good and how we might be able to develop that. And in the course of developing that leadership project, I had an opportunity to meet an amazing array of individuals, including former presidents of the United States that I had a chance to interview, the CEO of large companies like Ford and General Motors, as well as Walmart. I also had the chance to interview the presidents of Harvard, Stanford, and Princeton. All of them talked about the role in which they made strategic moves, strategic decisions that would allow them to navigate change that happened in their life. Change is one of those things that happens to us instantly, in a moment. Transition, however, is something that happens over weeks, or months, or years. Navigating change and transition can be some of the most important things that we do in our life. And particularly for us university students, thinking about how you navigate that with godly desire in a way that honors the Lord, it requires a lot of wisdom and discernment. So part of what we hope to do at institutions like Taylor and Mackenzie is help cultivate that sense of wisdom and discernment, where we can learn from great people who have been faithful and navigated those changes and transitions in their life with distinction and with integrity. So how is it that we think about these inflection points, these hinge moments that occur in our life? If you're like the average person in either Brazil or the United States, we're going to be given somewhere between 70 and 80 million minutes to make a difference in our life. But in the end, it will be probably 1 or 2 dozen of those minutes that disproportionately shape the rest of our lives. They shape the trajectory of who we become. And so we want to think about practical lessons that we can learn. The first is the importance of demonstrating creativity. This is Kevin Plank. He's a very unassuming and surprising CEO. Kevin was never a very good student. In fact, when he studied at the University of Maryland, he never really made above a C. Typically, he barely got by on his academic achievements. He also was a football player, but he was never going to be the starting player. Many of his teammates were drafted to play for NFL teams, but that was never going to be Kevin's future. Instead, he realized that he had to draw upon his unique skills and abilities and in one way or another, try to leverage those to make a positive difference. He faced a choice, as all of us do while he was approaching graduation, trying to think about how would he spend his days and what would be his future. For some of us, we pursue a career trajectory starting at high school age, and eventually it carries us through university. We know exactly what we want to do, but most people figure it out as they go along. And part of that figuring it out process entails a bit of trial and error. One day, Kevin came in from football practice. It was a hot afternoon. He took his shoulder pads off and realized he was wearing a white t-shirt underneath, and it was just drenched in sweat. He took the t-shirt off and put it on the scale, and it weighed 6 pounds. He thought, wow, if somehow I could have a shirt that didn't weigh me down, I could run a lot faster. I could actually be a better athletic performer. And he wondered, would it be possible to craft or create a textile that would actually allow the air to breathe between his skin and outside his padding? Could it actually function as sort of an internal air conditioning system where it would cool him as the sweat would wick away? He decided to invest in 6 different fibers, took his last bit of money before he graduated from university, and it turned out one of those worked. It would allow the sweat to wick away from his skin, the air to breathe, cool the runner down a little bit, and in the process be lighter for what he's having to carry. That was the beginning of a company we call Under Armour. Kevin Plank started Under Armour as an undergraduate student in his senior year. He not only created a company that now employs thousands of people around the world, but he quite literally created an entire industry that we call performance apparel. That's the way in which you deploy creativity when facing a hinge moment. Each of us have been given certain gifts, talents, and abilities by God. And part of the challenge and opportunity for us is to be attentive to how God has uniquely wired us, how he has uniquely created us with skills and abilities that we could deploy to start a new venture, begin a new program, or craft a life for ourselves. Part of the creativity that we have to pursue in hinge moments is actually making something of the world. Entrepreneurs are people who create things out of nothing. They craft them. And each of us can be an entrepreneur of sort. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to start your own business, but it does mean we have to take responsibility for saying, unto him much is given, much is required, as we're told in Luke chapter 12. So that's one of the first practical lessons that I learned while doing this big study. It was a chance to see how one leader was able to apply creativity to make a positive difference for the wider world. A second insight that I learned came from a man whose family started a company in the hospitality industry. His name is Bill Marriott. Now, when you've got the last name Marriott, people recognize you literally around the world for hotels and resorts. Whenever I go to Sao Paulo, I will typically stay at a Renaissance hotel that's not very far from Mackenzie. That's one of the brands that's owned by Marriott. And so it was kind of fun to get a chance to sit down with Bill Marriott to hear a little bit about his own story and his own journey. His parents taught him at a very young age that he needed to embody what he called a bias for action. By this, he means you've got to have a natural proclivity, a natural leaning to say, I'm going to step into uncertainty and take action. I'm going to find ways in which we can make a positive difference. And he says it's that bias for action that's allowed him to take advantage of entrepreneurial opportunities that come along. So many of us are wanting to say, what's the sure deal? What's the guaranteed bet? But those don't exist in the real world. We oftentimes have to use judgment and discernment. That's why so much of the Bible is about teaching us how we learn lessons from Scripture that we can apply to make good decisions in uncertain futures. A bias for action basically says you're going to be inclined toward making a decision and trying things out. In Silicon Valley, they call this the process of failing early that allows you to fail forward. In other words, if you can make failure a regular part of your routine, it's a sort of a trial and error mechanism. I do not cook, and my wife who's here, she can attest to that. I don't have any skills in the kitchen, but I have learned that I can experiment by making pancakes with my daughters. And I just can throw all kinds of different things in those pancakes. And as long as it has sugar in it, they will love them. So I've learned that you just sort of test things out. We tried pancakes with gummy bears. It's kind of interesting. We've tried it with different kinds of cereal thrown in, fruit, a variety of sweets. There is this idea that you want to just sort of try things out. So often, you will find that when you're in university, you may be nervous about taking a risk, but actually it's a better time than any other point in your life to take a risk. The reason is because You've got lots of freedom, lots of possibility. And if you fail, if you make a mistake, it won't be catastrophic. Rarely are you the financial supporter for your whole family when you're 21 or 22. But when you're 41 or 42, you very well might be. It's a lot harder to take a risk in your 40s or 50s than it is in your 20s. And so Bill Marriott taught me that you have to be willing to sort of test things out and to demonstrate that bias for action. Sometimes that means taking a risk by moving to a place where you don't know a lot of people. Sometimes it means being willing to take a risk to start a new venture or to introduce yourself to someone. Very practical advice of a bias for action. At both Mackenzie and Taylor, every year we bring different leaders to campus to speak in classes, speak in chapel. And each of them have come because they love working with young people, because they love the chance to interact with promising, talented, aspiring leaders. So take the initiative to go and shake their hand, introduce yourself. You never know. It may actually be that they could offer you an internship or maybe even an opportunity to interview for a job. That's an example of how we demonstrate a bias for action. In addition to creativity and a bias for action, I learned over the course of my study, sometimes you have to embody what we call improvisation. I learned this from a very talented musician named Condoleezza Rice. Condoleezza Rice is an unusual woman because she has been accomplished in so many different fields. But oftentimes she made decisions and changes in her life because it was the most natural opportunity for her, but not one she had been planning or expecting. When she was growing up, she took years and years of piano lessons and actually became a very talented concert pianist. Everyone in her circle of friends and family had told her that that would probably be her career, that she would perform on some of the world's greatest stages as a concert pianist. She went one day as a 14-year-old to one of the largest global competitions for piano performance called the Van Cliburn Competition. It was held in Fort Worth, Texas, in the heart of the U.S. And while she was there, she had been standing backstage waiting to perform. This particular piece, she told me as we sat down in her office on the campus of Stanford, this particular piece, she had been practicing for over a year. She had exercised and worked on it multiple times, and it was going to be flawlessly executed. As she was sitting backstage, she recognized the beginning notes of the very song she had been preparing, but it was being performed by another competitor. It was a young man, not from nearby, and she said, I listened to him. I didn't watch him, I listened. And as I had my back turned to him and listened to this guy who was younger than I was, his execution was flawless. His musicality was perfect. Everything about his way of playing that piece was stronger and better than I was going to be able to do. She said, I realized in that moment, there is no way I can perform this as well as that guy did. After he completed the competition, he's standing backstage with her before she goes on stage. And she thought, you know, I have been working on this for a year. I wonder how long he's been working on it. So she got the courage to approach him and said, how long did you practice that particular piece? He said, oh, actually, I've been working on a different piece for many months, but decided about 3 weeks ago, I wanted to try something different. And so I picked it up. And he said, you know, I made a mistake or two, but I think it probably went okay. She said her heart sank when she heard that because she realized, I will never be as good as this guy who in a matter of 3 weeks was able to perform a piece better than I could after working on it for a full year. There will always be people who can do something better than you in different areas. Always. There will always be someone who can outrun you, always be someone who could program a software application better than you. There will always be someone who could sing a melody better than you. It's just part of the human condition. There's always going to be someone who will be better. But part of what we learn in Hinge Moments is how you take advantage of the unique giftings and abilities and be open to what God might do in your life. When Condoleezza Rice realized as a 14-year-old that she would never be as talented as that other performer, she said, it was an inflection point, a hinge moment where I realized I'm going to have to do something very different with my life. Because of that, she and her family talked about it and decided that she would apply to go to university at a much earlier age than usual. She graduated high school early and actually enrolled at the University of Denver as a 16-year-old. While there, she took a wide spectrum of classes because she was still exploring possibilities and decided that she wanted to take a class on the Soviet Union. It was taught by a venerable professor at the time named Professor Korbel. He had fled from Eastern Europe and settled in the United States and was really an expert not just on the Soviet Union, but really the Soviet system and communist Russia, as well as looking at dynamics on the Cold War from 1945 to 1985. She became fascinated with Professor Korbel and his passion for the Soviet Union, so much so that she decided she would study under him and decided to major in international relations. After she finished her undergraduate degree, she was so interested in it, she applied to do graduate work at Notre Dame University, and she pursued a master's degree and eventually a PhD. Through that, she ended up mastering the Russian language and became a real expert on the Soviet Union. The interesting thing about Professor Korbel is that he not only was a mentor to Condoleezza Rice, but he was also a mentor to another woman who served as the Secretary of State for the United States. This is the father of Madeleine Albright. So an extraordinary man who influenced two different women. And part of what made Condoleezza Rice such an effective leader is that she was willing to take that skill and ability that she had as a musician and apply it to her life. So often I'm amazed at folks who in our churches can improvise on the piano and they can sort of just somehow make the melody come alive. And oftentimes if you go to more charismatic churches, those piano players are very talented because they have to be willing to sort of go with the flow. The pastor sometimes will decide to speak for 2 minutes or 20 minutes and the piano player is just playing underneath and they've got to be ready to pull out the hymn or the praise song that people are going to sing, and to be able to do that really well. That improvisation skill is something that Condoleezza Rice learned as a musician, but applied in her career, first as an academic and then as a policy leader. I had a chance to sit down with Dr. Rice after her time serving in the White House in Washington, D.C. You may remember she served as Secretary of the State as well as National Security Advisor for President George W. Bush. And when I sat down, I asked her about her most poignant moment of all those 8 years serving in Washington. I thought that she was going to tell me a story about being the National Security Advisor on September 11th. Or I thought she might talk about the day that she was sworn in as Secretary of State, the first African-American woman to hold that distinction. But instead, she said, I think probably the most impactful time of my entire 8 years in Washington occurred in June of 2002. Now, as she's telling me that, I'm thinking in my head, what happened in June of 2002? And she said, well, we were gathered in the Oval Office in what's called the Principals Meeting. This is a meeting of the President of the United States, his top 12 to 15 advisors. They gather in a circle, and it's an opportunity where they debate policy issues. This particular day, they were there to debate an initiative that was going to be a signature element of George W. Bush's foreign policy initiative. He had campaigned around a posture of what he called compassionate conservatism and really wanted to have a foreign policy that, at least in one way, that would demonstrate that sort of compassionate conservatism. At that time, the AIDS pandemic was just ravaging across sub-Saharan Africa. Quite literally, every single day, men and women were dying from AIDS in such large numbers that they were creating thousands of orphans across sub-Saharan Africa every day. It was a real problem. It was not a problem, though, in the West. In North America, South America, we had developed a series of drugs that people could take, pills that you would take, that was basically a version of chemotherapy. It did not heal you of AIDS, but it allowed you to be able to live with the disease. It was an expensive regimen that you had to go through, one that required particular time and energy and effort, but it had proven to be successful. The debate was whether the US government ought to invest in the infrastructure to deliver the same kind of medicine across the African continent. The problem was that there was not the same public health infrastructure in Africa as there was in the US. And there was this concern that Africans may not be as focused on the timeliness of taking certain medicines, that the medicine does not work unless you take it in a certain routine in certain time sequences. But really the key question was, would the US government allocate $15 billion, which was the largest allocation of US foreign aid in history? It was going to be 4 times the size of the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe after World War II. Would the US government make that kind of commitment for something that is not seen as directly related to American foreign policy? As it turned out on that particular day, they're seated in a circle, and at the head of the circle on one side is President Bush, and right beside him was Condoleezza Rice, the National Security Advisor. She said, I didn't always sit beside the president, but this particular day I happened to be there. She recounted to me the story of how they went around the room, starting beside the president, where each advisor sort of gave their interpretation of whether this was a good idea or not. By the time they reached her, the room was divided. Half of the people were in support of this agenda. Half of them thought it would be a bad idea. And then the president said, Condi, what do you think? She said, Mr. President, I understand the expense of what's involved here. And I understand the real challenges, concerns about the public health infrastructure and whether it would actually work. But she said, I want to tell you a little bit of my story. She said, the same year that I went to that Van Cliburn competition and learned that I was not going to be the piano performer I'd always dreamed of being, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. Because we were living near a medical community in Birmingham, my mom was able to get into an experimental treatment for breast cancer. And so mom entered into that routine. And as it turned out, it was successful. It did not cure her of breast cancer, but it allowed her to live. She survived the first year, then the second year, the third year. And actually, she was able to see me head off to university, develop a real interest in the Soviet Union, pursue a master's degree, earn a doctorate, and land my first teaching job on the campus of Stanford. Mom was with us for another 15 years after that initial diagnosis of breast cancer. And she said, I wouldn't trade those 15 years for anything. It was a hinge moment that she faced, that her family faced. And because of the generosity of others and medical care, her mom was able to live. Condoleezza Rice then turned to the president and said, Mr. President, we know that what we're considering will not cure these folks of AIDS, but it would allow them to get an extra 5, 10, maybe 15 years with their families, with their children. It would allow us to sort of stop the bleeding, so to speak, of the thousands of orphans that are being created across Africa. And she said, if we, the people in this room, have it within our power to keep an entire continent of children from becoming orphans, if we could do that, and we choose not to do that today, if we choose not to do that, I think history will judge this moment as our administration's greatest moral failure. She said after that, the room turned silent for about 1 minute, which she said is an eternity when you're in the Oval Office. We were all waiting to see what the president would do. He then looked up and said, well, I guess we know what we have to do. That day, they launched what is called PEPFAR. It is the most significant public policy achievement of George W. Bush's presidency. Liberals and conservatives alike have hailed it as a great public policy achievement. I had a chance personally to go and visit places like Zambia and Zimbabwe, which were in fact being ravaged by the AIDS pandemic. And because of the way in which PEPFAR made a difference, it created a whole different environment. It created an inflection point, a hinge moment, all because one woman mastered the skill of improvisation, felt a calling to go into international relations, and then when given the moment in the room where decisions are made, she was able to speak about her own journey of faith and the way in which you can make a difference, catalyzing entrepreneurial energy for the common good. That's the third key lesson that I learned over 10 years of interviewing these great leaders. Fourth key insight is the importance of both humility and confidence and how you hold those two things together. The picture of the man there on the left wearing the black suit, his name is Bernard Arnault. Most recently, he's been named the richest person in the world. He and his family own what is called LVMH, Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. It is a luxury goods conglomerate based in Paris that helps oversee a wide variety of luxury goods. And he's been a very successful business executive for a very long time. But one of the problems when you're in leadership is that oftentimes people will not tell you of the ways in which you're making mistakes or need to make a recalibration in judgment. Oftentimes you need people who are willing to speak confidently and directly, but also with humility. He got a chance to meet a man named Mike Ullman, who has become a dear friend and a mentor to me. Mike has an interesting story. He grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, did his undergraduate degree at the University of Cincinnati, where he was a mediocre student. But he had always been somebody who was willing to work hard. After a while, he ended up getting some opportunities to go into the retail business. And at a relatively young age, he was named the CEO of Macy's, the iconic retail company based in New York City. After that, he had a chance to move to Hong Kong, where he decided to create a whole new kind of business. It's what we now know today as duty-free shopping. Mike Ullman is the man who invented it. The idea is that if you could sell expensive luxury goods, like perfume or chocolates, if you could sell those in transportation hubs where people were not going to be subject to paying local sales tax, it would be a way of actually selling those products to cost less to the consumer. And in the process of that, people would be more likely to buy. So he started it in Hong Kong, really at their airport, but it soon began to grow. And now, every time you travel internationally, you find duty-free shops, and they sell a whole variety of ideas. Well, they sold a number of the products that are produced by this luxury goods conglomerate, LVMH. And so because of that, Bernard Arnault in Paris began paying attention to what was happening in Hong Kong. Eventually, he invited Mike Ullman to come and join him in Paris at LVMH. It was an unprecedented move because that particular company had never had somebody outside of France come lead their enterprise. I asked Mike Ullman, why did Bernard Arnault, why did he hire you? And he said, because he wanted somebody who would be able to speak the truth to him. You see, oftentimes we are called to speak truth to power, and it requires a unique combination of personal humility. We're not trying to sort of make a name for ourselves, but also be willing to speak confidently about what is true and what's real. Having that unique combination of humility and confidence becomes a really significant way in which the Lord can use you to make a positive difference. Mike Ullman would say that that has changed his humility and confidence. So I found that there's people that you have to demonstrate a degree of creativity like Kevin Plank. You have to demonstrate a bias for action, a willingness to sort of take something and move forward like we saw with Bill Marriott. I saw the story of Condoleezza Rice and how she demonstrated improvisational skills that not only helped her own career trajectory, but actually made a difference on a global scale. And then the importance of humility and confidence that Mike Ullman demonstrated at LVMH. The fifth and final key element of how we can demonstrate and develop entrepreneurial leadership that serves the common good is a simple measure of focus. Drew Faust was the first woman to be named the president of Harvard University. Pat Gelsinger recently was named the CEO of Intel. Both of them, I had a chance to sit down and interview. And it's interesting because both of these individuals have sought to bring a degree of focus and intentionality to their organizations. Harvard is this iconic institution, most famous university in the world, celebrated recently its 375th anniversary. That's a really old institution. And Harvard, which is also the wealthiest institution of higher learning in the world, is a very decentralized kind of place. You have a school of education, a school of law, school of arts and sciences, a business school. All of them operate independently. All of them operate with their own endowments, their own resources, their own faculties. But Drew Faust had a vision for finding a way to bring them all under a larger umbrella, an initiative that she called One Harvard. She spent the entirety of her presidency, nearly a decade, trying to help unite these different sort of elements to say, how can we bring people together and create a greater synergy? Because oftentimes when we're trying to make a positive difference, we can become distracted or decentered. And actually what you got to do is continue to remain focused on the goal and objection. A real practical thing of what you can do is just write down your goals and put them on your bathroom mirror or have them someplace that you see on a regular basis to remind yourself what you're trying to achieve. Pat Gelsinger is probably the most accomplished technology leader who's also a committed Christian. And he said one of the key things that he's trying to do at Intel is to help this global enterprise to be able to work together, to be able to solve some of the greatest problems. The development of silicon chips, which we use in everything from our computers to our telephones to the electronics that help make microphones and lights work. All of that is one of the key challenges in a global economy. And he said, what I've got to do is find a way in which we bring those different pieces together. That comes as a result of real focus. But over the course of my study, I found so many individuals who were willing to make a positive difference, but they had to be willing to say, I'm going to be focused on leaving a legacy of influence, making a very positive difference. One of those people that I met is a gentleman named Kien Pham. Kien Pham was originally from South Vietnam, and in the middle of the Vietnam War in the 1970s, as his city fell to the enemy, he and his family decided that they had to leave the country. They, along with tens of thousands of other South Vietnamese, took to a series of boats on the South China Sea. He actually was living on one of those boats in the South China Sea for months at a time. While he was there, he realized we're going to have to find a way to make a new life for ourselves, find a way in which we could get resettled. They applied for and were actually accepted into a refugee resettlement program that placed them in Boulder, Colorado in 1977. Now, he spoke no English at the time and really didn't know much about American society, but because Boulder is home to a major university, CU Boulder, he decided that he would listen to different lectures that would be conducted at the end of the day. So he would oftentimes go to those lectures just trying to work on his English skills to see if he could get them any better. One day, he heard a lecture by his local public official, a man named Tim Wirth, who was serving as his representative in Congress. And while he was listening to Tim Wirth, he recognized that Tim Wirth was talking about a particular experience that he had serving as a White House Fellow, a program that had been started by President Johnson in 1965. Kien Pham didn't know much about it, but he went home, began to research the White House Fellowship, and decided he himself wanted to apply to see if he could become a White House Fellow. It's incredibly competitive. It's much more competitive than the Rhodes Scholarship. They'll have 3,000 or 4,000 people who will apply every year, and they'll choose usually 10 or 15 people. The idea is that you get a chance to work for 1 year in the office of the President of the United States or one of the cabinet secretaries. Working up close with them, you develop a lot of leadership skills, get a chance to see how you can make a positive difference through government. You take those skills back to wherever you came from, usually returning to your old job. And the idea is that it might prepare them for leadership down the road. Kiem Pham applied for the White House Fellowship a few years later, but because it's so very competitive, he was rejected pretty quickly. But Kiem Pham demonstrated an important skill for entrepreneurial leaders who want to make a difference in the world. He had resilience and grit and decided he would apply a second time. The second time he applied, he went a little bit further, had a chance to make it to the regional competition. So at this point, he was not just interviewing one-on-one, but in sort of a group interview, but then he was rejected. He decided to apply a third time. And that third time, he actually went all the way to the national competition. And by the hand of Providence, he was selected to be a White House Fellow. It's an amazing story. In 1977, he's floating around the South China Sea as a refugee. 8 years later, in 1985, he's shaking hands with the President of the United States in the White House and served as a White House Fellow for an entire year in President Reagan's administration. But after that, he began to say, how can I apply the lessons that I have learned over the course of my life to make a more positive difference? And he ended up saying, I want to make a positive difference back in my home country of Vietnam. He ended up putting together a group of investors to launch a telecommunications company in Vietnam. And still to this day, he's one of the most significant telecom investors in Vietnam and one of the most successful executives in his homeland. It was an amazing story. I'm sitting across the table interviewing Kiem Pham, and I said, how in the world did you end up getting drawn into this? And what is it that you decided to make a positive difference? Because I had learned that Kiem Pham actually had decided he was going to use his entrepreneurial leadership for something that would serve a much bigger cause. You see, in 1998, when he started his company in Vietnam, he realized that there were 400 political prisoners of war that had been held in captivity since 1977 at the end of the Vietnam War. Over 20 years, these political prisoners had been held. And he said, I wanted to figure out if there was a way that we could secure their release. He had stayed in touch with that congressman, Tim Wirth, who ended up being a mentor and a friend. And at this point in time, Tim Wirth was serving as Undersecretary of State. So we went to go see him. He said, I have an idea of how we might secure the release of some of these folks. Would you be willing to send a cable to the U.S. ambassador and ask him to go along with my idea? And let's see if we can make a difference to secure the release of a few of these prisoners. Sure enough, that happened. Kiem Pham began talking with some of his contacts there in Vietnam. And after a number of weeks, he secured the release of the first political prisoner who had been held in captivity for 22 years. It's an amazing story. He got the U.S. ambassador to hold a press conference. The ambassador praised the Vietnamese government for this magnanimous act of clemency and then said, they were excited to see what might happen. A couple weeks later, Kiem Pham went back to his contacts there in the Vietnamese government and said, those Americans, they were pretty impressed with what you did. Why don't we try doing it a second time, release a second political prisoner, and see if that might actually open up some more doors of cooperation with the West. After a few weeks, they released a second political prisoner. And then it became a regular rhythm where every couple of weeks they would release a political prisoner. So much so that by late 1999, they gotten into a regular rhythm of releasing a political prisoner every other week. It was December of 1999 when Kiem Pham went to his contact there at the Vietnamese government and said, we've been dealing with this retail, let's try wholesale. He said, in many of the world religions, there is this idea that the millennial year, the year 2000, should be a year of jubilee, a year in which the prisoners are set free. Would you consider setting free all the remaining political prisoners that have been held in captivity since the end of the Vietnam War? They weren't sure they were going to do this, and there was a lot of negotiating back and forth with American officials and Vietnamese officials. But on December 31st, 1999, Kim Pham secured the release of all the remaining political prisoners. It's an amazing story. A man who has been a successful entrepreneur who was willing to make a difference that also benefited the common good. I said, Kian, why did you do it? What was it that was driving your commitment around this? He said, every night I floated around the South China Sea, I kept thinking about this one man. He said, I was interviewed on one of the morning talk shows here in the U.S. It's the Today Show. And they asked me, what was I thinking about the minute I shook hands with President Reagan in the Oval Office, being an immigrant who ended up becoming a White House fellow? I didn't tell him at the time, but really I was thinking about this one man. And he said, every single day that I went and worked on trying to secure the release of one of those political prisoners, I kept thinking about this one man. I said, Kian, who was it? He said, it was my uncle, who is number 400 on that list and who walks as a free man today. Entrepreneurial leadership that works for the common good. That is both our calling and our opportunity as we begin this new year. Thank you very much.
We have several questions, both from Taylor University and Mackenzie for Dr. Lindsay. So I'll start with one and let's go from there. How should our Christian faith influence or impact our practice of entrepreneurship?
It's a great question. I'm really persuaded that one of the ways that we can demonstrate the difference of our Christian faith is not just how we go about our actions. Obviously, that we hope that Christians will be ethical in their business practices, that they'll demonstrate integrity and honesty in their business practices. But also, I think we have to think about entrepreneurial ventures that benefit not just ourselves, but benefit other people. I think one of the most profound ways that we can bear witness to our faith is when we're willing to sacrifice things that naturally people think we're entitled to. Maybe it's sacrificing a perk or a privilege like a parking spot at our company or a bonus that we might get at the end of the year. But there's an element in which we're willing to give things away, the way in which we're willing to give things up. I think that that's how we demonstrate entrepreneurship and making a very positive difference. So a sense of sacrifice, a sense of working for something that's bigger toward other people. Most entrepreneurs, they have to early on, they're not taking a salary, they're investing whatever resources they have in the venture. But later on in life, when you become a more successful entrepreneur, it can be tempting to live a more luxurious lifestyle, drive a fancier car, live in a nicer house. But I interviewed dozens of entrepreneurs who have done the countercultural move to say, I'm willing to give things up to be a blessing to other people. I think one of the things we have to do is we have to say, we are blessed in order to be a blessing. I think that's a significant way that our entrepreneurial ventures can also demonstrate our Christian commitments.
Thank you. How can we think creatively in a seemingly more rigid profession?
Well, I think that lots of organizations can become sort of structures that it's hard to do new ventures or new opportunities. But I think that you can demonstrate creativity in the way you do your work and the way you relate to other people. And I'll give you maybe 2 or 3 very practical ideas. One is that I think that people of faith should be the most encouraging people around. So if you can cheer people on when they have success. Look for ways in which you can sort of tell them thank you or you appreciate them. I think that that can be a creative way in which you demonstrate something that's different. I also think that you can as you're going about your work, whether you're the CEO or the most junior associate, I think you look for ways in which you can serve other people. So trying to find ways in which you take more of those service roles, that can be a creative move that I think can also cause people to ask questions, and oftentimes it can create opportunities for your career upward mobility. So I think creativity is largely a part about service and doing something that's countercultural.
Thank you. Here's a question. I have one more year before I graduate. Are there graduate programs at Taylor? If so, how do I apply?
Oh, I love that to my friends in Brazil. Yes, please come. We would love to have you. There are many opportunities, and we're actually launching a variety of additional graduate programs over the next year. So if you're interested, we hope you will check out our website. And if you want, you can send me an email. My email address is super easy. president@taylor.edu. So send me a message and we'll get you connected to the right people. We'd love to have some more folks from Mackenzie to come and join us. I hope when you come, you'll also bring my favorite dessert in the world, which is this amazing chocolate called Brigadeiro. I love it. So I hope you'll bring some when you come.
Thank you. How do I become aware of my own blind spots and improve my soft skills?
Get married. I find that our spouses can tell us our blind spots better than anybody else. So Rebecca knows all of my shortcomings, and she's not afraid to tell me about them. So I think it's really important to have good friends. It can be a girlfriend or boyfriend, a fiance or a spouse, but it can also be your roommate or a best friend who can sort of speak into our life. One of the things I think is really important along the way is for you to have a chance to say, hey, I'm really interested in doing X or Y, and how do you feel that I'm doing in this particular area? I find that if you got a relationship, you have an opportunity to speak truth into somebody's life. And I think we have to use that as an opportunity to help each of us get better along the way.
Thank you. I am looking for an internship. What is the best way for me to prepare?
Almost every internship opportunity that comes your way comes through a relationship. It's very rare that you're going to land an internship, a good internship, without having some kind of relational connection. So when you're looking for a job or when you're looking to get started in the professional realm, you need to tell everyone you know that you're looking for something. So it's a matter of sharing with friends from church, people that were teachers or coaches or pastors or friends in your growing up years. Let them know that you're looking for something, because oftentimes they work in organizations or firms or have connections that can open up doors of opportunity. Also, I will say some of the best internships in the beginning are unpaid internships. So sometimes you have to do an internship where you're not making any money alongside another job where you are making money, but it's not really an internship. It's just helping to make ends meet. But in the process of doing both of those things together, I think that you'll find you'll get some good opportunities. So tell people that you're looking for a job and then actively try to pursue them. And I say, generally speaking, it takes 6 to 12 months to land an internship. Those are very hard to find early on. So start early and make those connections. And then I think it can open up doors of possibility for you.
Thank you. I'm still unsure which career path I should follow. How do I decide?
I think you have to follow the example of Condoleezza Rice, and you try a large set of things out. You just give yourself time to experiment. University is really great because you can take classes in lots of different fields. That's a very low risk way in which you get exposed to things. In addition to internships, they have these things called externships. An externship is basically job shadowing. So you ask somebody who's in a field you're interested in and say, hey, could I just come and see what you do on a regular basis? I bet every year I have a few people that shadow me for a day or two, get a chance to just see what is it like to be a university president. You can do that for a whole range of things. It might be a dentist, or it might be a business executive, or it might be a lawyer or a social worker. But just getting a chance to see how people interact and what their jobs look like become a really great way of trying things out. I also will say your first job out of university will never be your best job. So you just take whatever thing comes along the way. My first job after graduating college was as a software computer trainer. So I would work with mid-level managers to teach them basic end-using computing. I taught them things like Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint. I knew virtually nothing about any of those things, but I was a decent communicator. I had some teaching experience, and the firm I went to work with was willing to teach me so I could teach my students. And I did that day in and day out. I basically was a teacher of adults, and I did that every single day for 3 years. At the end of every day of training, my students, it was a class of 12 to 15 people, would fill out an evaluation, and my compensation was tied to those evaluation scores. So I cared a lot about those evaluation scores. And it's amazing what a better teacher I became in those 3 years, because I mastered the art of learning. If my students could learn the material, they would leave feeling like it was a productive day, and they tended to give me higher evaluation scores. So I wanted that to be true for me, and so every day I got better and better. And most of the platform skills that I use in my job as Taylor's president, I learned in that first job out of college. And it had nothing to do with my major. It had nothing to do with where I had internships. It just happened to be the job I applied for and got. Oftentimes in God's providence, it's those kinds of opportunities that change our lives. And I think you have to just be open to the way in which God will lead you along the way.
Thank you. I'm shy and I'm afraid that this personality trait will interfere with my work. What are the most valuable traits in the market nowadays? Will my shyness be a hindrance?
You know, I think that the world needs both introverts and extroverts. So I don't think that shyness is something to be afraid of. I think instead you find opportunities where you can demonstrate your skill. Oftentimes shy people are very good at keeping confidential information. And so they can serve in roles like legal, or they might be able to be good counselors, or they might be able to be people who can deal with company secrets, all kinds of things. So shyness could actually be your secret strength. It could actually be the very thing that helps you to move up in the world. Part of what you have to do is just create opportunities to play to your strengths. The example of Kevin Plank, he wasn't a star student. He wasn't a star athlete, but he was a creative thinker. He applied that creativity to experiment with 6 textiles, one of which ends up becoming the beginning of Under Armour. That's a great example of how just being creative, of saying, Lord, what are the things you've naturally gifted me to do, and how can I actually use those to find the right kind of career where I can make a positive difference? I think that's part of leveraging hinge moments to the most impact.
Thank you. What does it mean to be an entrepreneur in ministry?
An entrepreneur in ministry, well, I think anybody who's in ministry is an entrepreneur. You're about growing disciples, building up the church, winning people to come and know the Lord. And so there's entrepreneurship every single day. Oftentimes, people who are in ministry are very actively involved at starting things from nothing, creating opportunities. And so we want to really try and help leverage that. So whether you're at Mackenzie or at Taylor, we're hoping that you get the opportunity to really develop those kinds of skills and make a very positive difference. Maybe time for one more question, Dr. Edwards.
Okay, well then, does Taylor have scholarships and opportunities for exchange students?
We do have opportunities, and so if you're interested in learning more, we would love to have some Mackenzie students come here. We find Brazilians are the life of the party, so we want to have you here. I hope you will consider Taylor. It's been a real blessing to be with you all. To our friends in Sao Paulo and across Brazil, thank you so much for all that you're doing. We're grateful for our partnership. All of us here at Taylor, we love you guys. We look forward to more chances for partnership and are grateful for this chance we've had together. And we'll say goodbye now from Taylor. Thanks so much.
Muito obrigada, professor.
Thank you, Professor Lindsay. Thank you very much. Your words were very inspiring. The stories you brought us were experiences. They brought us lots of lessons, and lessons that are very important for us, and talk about the need for us to be creative, improvise, to use our bias for action. You brought us so many ideas that really touch us, but more than everything, I think the main thing that you brought us at is the idea that we never know how far you can get. We know we can choose our next step, but we never know how far we can go, where we'll be in 5 or 10 years. So let's give ourselves a chance. Let's believe in ourselves. Thank you very much for being with us here, our directors, coordinators, professors, students. Thank you, all the students who have been with us remotely. And I want to invite you for the events we're going to have in the afternoon and the evening. In the afternoon, we are going to have Mateus, who is from Mackenzie and has created Moradigna, a social business for housing. He's going to talk about all his journey in this fantastic project. It's a really great project. Then we have Anderson Bars. He's a lawyer, and he's going to tell us how companies are looking at soft skills and their importance for professionals in Brazil. And we'll close that with questions and answers. And then we are going to talk a little bit more about the Max Stellar program, the opportunities for you to develop your skills. And to close our event, in the evening, we'll have the fantastic architect Mariana Montag, who's going to talk about a housing project for women in Uganda and talk about her experience and how it affected her professional and personal development. Then we have Alberto Reutemann, a lawyer who graduated in Mackenzie. He's from Escola do Caos, and he's going to talk about the time he spent in university and how that has transformed his journey. In closing that night, we'll have Professor Cleverson Pereira showing academic opportunities regarding extension studies.
So we're going to have a lot of content, a lot of people coming in. And of course, everything is going to be available on our website. We'll be able to watch, re-watch, so and make the most of it, all right? I'll see you later. Thank you.
Oiê, bem-vindos à Aula Magna da graduação. Nessa edição, teremos novidades. Como sempre acontece no final das palestras do seu período, você deve preencher um formulário que garante sua presença no evento e expressa sua satisfação com os palestrantes, temas de palestras, etc. Dessa vez, além dessas informações, você deverá preencher uma atividade de reflexão sobre o evento que poderá se tornar uma grande ação no futuro. Em 30 dias, você poderá visualizar uma devolutiva dessa atividade lá no seu Moodle em uma nova aba com o nome de Aula Magna da Graduação 2023.